God who loves us so much that you accept us just as we are, and God who loves us so much that you are unwilling to let us remain there. Thank you for this day, for the opportunity to kick off our fall programming season, and for the opportunity to learn more about your call to be transformed through Jesus Christ. It's in your name we pray, and all God's people said, amen. So this morning, our sermon is more of a discipleship interview, and we're grateful to have with us staff persons and volunteers who serve as primary leaders of these ministries. Before we begin the interview, though, we'd like to have you hear these words from Romans chapter 12. These words are spoken often in the church, and we find these words penned by Paul to the disciples, to followers of Jesus in the church at Rome. Romans 12, 1 and 2. Listen for God's word. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your act of spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
The word transformed, we've said this before, in the Greek starts out metamorpho, right? Metamorphosis. You hear that English word in there. And it plays a role in who we believe we are called to be at American Reformed Church. A people called to be transformed by Jesus to transform the world. We say that over and over. You probably think we sound like broken records, but that's who we believe we're called to be. And metamorpho, meaning to be changed, to become, to be transformed, is one of the ways in which we transform ourselves like Jesus and then go out into the world to transform it. So specifically to become more like Jesus, we participate in worship and we experience God's presence. We spend time with one another in authentic community, learning from one another. And we also participate in discipleship activities. These can be Sunday school classes, small groups, different seminars and opportunities, educational opportunities. Kids are in F3 and youth group as well. And these are the ways in which we experience the stories, the teachings of Jesus. And when we hear these stories and these teachings, we are, parts of us, transformed to become more like Jesus. This morning, we have Laura Jonker, our Director of Children's Ministries, Rosalyn Koster, our Director of Youth Ministries, and Heie, our Coordinator for Adult Discipleship Opportunities. And they've agreed to engage in a little bit of a conversation or an interview with us this morning, that we may hear their heart and understanding of discipleship and in some ways be called into that through their words and their experiences. So we're thankful that you are willing to have this conversation with us this morning.
So Laura, we're going to begin with you. You're responsible for envisioning discipleship ministries for our very youngest members of our community of faith. So tell us a little bit about what discipleship means to you and why you see it as a vital part of faith formation in children.
Yeah, I think there's lots of ways you can answer this question, but I see discipleship as learning to both claim and live out an identity as a child of God. And I think that's applicable to any age, obviously. We're all children of God, but especially for children as they're growing up and learning who they are in this community of faith as well as in the world. I know in psychology, when I was at Northwestern, we learned about two different psychologist theories of development. One, Piaget about cognitive development, and then also James Fowler with spiritual development. And both of these psychologists really emphasize how vital it is for kids in the early stages of development to have a sense of belonging and security and trust. And so I see discipleship as a way that we can really create a sense of trust for kids and that this place is safe, this place is secure, and that they can build off of those foundational blocks as they grow up and become more of who God made them to be. Now, obviously, when it all boils down, as Elizabeth described earlier, a lot of children's discipleship involves telling stories. I'm sure we probably couldn't even count how many times we've heard the story of Jonah or the story of, Jesus' miracles if you grew up in the church. And I believe that in order to form this relationship of trust with the church and with God, kids need to know who God is. They need to know who they are learning to trust. And so by learning God's stories and learning more about God's mission for the world and God's kingdom, my prayer is that kids will learn to trust and really build off of that as they grow here in the church.
Thanks, Laura. Rosalyn, you work with what I think is arguably the busiest age group in our society right now. They're pulled in a large variety of directions. They've got school and extracurricular activities, and then, of course, social commitments. We can't forget friends. And then lots of them are holding down jobs, too. So in the midst of all that, you're providing space for them to remember that their particular call also is to be disciples of Jesus in the midst of all of those activities. So what does discipleship mean to you? And why do you see it as something that is valuable as a part of a busy teen's life?
I think that Laura gave a great foundational answer for what discipleship is, and I think that as children transition into their teenage years, that what then becomes important is for them to continue to learn who God is. That is a lifelong question in pursuit of us learning who God is. And then also how they fit into God's story. Mm-hmm. Because I think at first, as children, they are learning what God's story is. And as they get older, as we get older, the question becomes, how do I fit into this story? Mm-hmm. And I think this is incredibly valuable because it's centering for our teenagers. The teenage years are hard because there's a lot of change, there's a lot of development going on. And transitions happen more often and irregularly, and that can be really jarring. And so I think that the moments they spend engaged in God's word and engaged in God's story are an opportunity for them to remember who they are and whose they are.
Excellent, Rose. That's really good. So Harold, we're going to move on to you. You invest a good amount of energy and passion into thinking and planning adult discipleship opportunities for Sunday morning. And we're blessed by that and by your gifts in doing so. We have one of the most varied and interesting list of opportunities that I think Elizabeth or I have ever seen in a church. Every single semester we are struck by just the incredible opportunities we have as a congregation to learn more in our adult discipleship program. So give us a bit of a summary of your understanding of discipleship and why it's something that extends beyond those early church years and continues into adulthood.
Let me first acknowledge that I don't do this by myself. I have a great planning team who assists me, consisting of Kevin McMahon, Pam Hoffmeyer, Wanda Cordles, Jeff Tolsma, and Sarah Tolsma. They're a great team. To your question, my understanding of discipleship is that Christians are called to mature into the likeness of Christ. And this is a lifelong process that requires a lifetime of learning. My experience with learning is that after having studied at 3 colleges and universities for many years, 10 to be exact, I was a slow learner. Most of my learning about important issues related to life have taken place after my formal education was completed. And much of that ongoing learning took place by means of conversation, by my listening to and talking to persons whose life experiences differed from mine, persons brought up in different faith traditions, persons who had different family experiences, persons of a different age or gender or race or ethnicity. As a result, my focus in helping to shape our adult discipleship offerings has always been on conversation, not on lecturing, but on talking respectfully to one another on issues. And because of the marvelous diversity of our adult membership in terms of their background and life experiences, we will inevitably uncover disagreements about some important issues. That is all the more reason why we need to talk to each other in our adult discipleship courses for the purpose of learning from each other's unique perspectives.
Now, Laura, it's obvious that you care about shaping the discipleship of our children, and that's after all your ministry area. But why do you think the broader church should care about discipleship, specifically how our adults can, of all ages, can show the care of the discipleship of our children of all stages?
As I said before, kids have a deep need for security and belonging and trust within the church. And as a church family, we have the tools to provide that. We have the tools to provide a safe space for them as they have their initial experiences of who God is. I remember from my own elementary years, when I grew up in the church back in Wisconsin, my pastor, Al, was really influential in helping me experience security in the church. He was a very wise, empathetic man that had lots of great things to say, but it was more in what he did than what he said that taught me that church was a safe space. I remember after church, often my family would be the last ones to leave because my dad would be questioning the pastor about everything he said in the sermon. And we would be sitting there waiting patiently, trying to be patient for my dad. And Pastor Al, as he's listening to my dad's questions, would just reach out his hand on occasion and just touch my head. And it was so simple, but it was so influential in my life because I grew up in a family of 5 kids where people never remembered our names because we all looked very similar, and people were just kind of the Jonker kids, instead of actually saying my name of I'm Laura. And when Pastor Al would reach out and just touch my head and notice me and care and not even say anything but show that he was there and it was secure and safe to just be there together, tingles, I just remember tingles going down my spine every time the pastor would touch my head. And so I want to say, if you care about kids, if you want to really show them the love of God in this place, you can do the same. You don't necessarily have to touch kids' heads, but you can volunteer in one of our discipleship areas of F3 or Sunday school or children in worship, or even just being a prayer partner for a child, where you are just committing to caring about them. You're going to show that child the love of God. Kids in their early stages of faith development really base a lot on experiences. So they're going to remember more than just what you say. They're going to remember if they felt welcomed or if they felt ignored, if they felt excluded or if they felt loved in this place. So yeah, if you care, I encourage you to just go out and love these kids and show them the face of God.
Thanks, Laura. Rose, you have a really nice handful of volunteers helping out with middle school youth group and high school youth group and middle school Sunday school and high school Sunday school. In fact, I was talking to Raya coming home from youth group, and I said, well, who are all the adult leaders? And I think she named off more adult leaders than kids, which is really cool. It's like a 1-to-1 ratio. But as we think beyond that, beyond those who have specifically volunteered to help with middle school and high school students, for those of us who don't volunteer to help in those arenas, what are some ways that as a church body we can plug in to these youth and maybe find ways of connection in their own faith formation?
I mean, I could give you a lot of really selfish reasons why you should invest in the discipleship of our youth. We have a lot of fun. I mean, if you want to have fun, volunteer with us. We always are laughing and hanging out, and these students are incredibly interesting. I learned so much just by listening to them and having conversations with them that they encourage me to keep growing in life, not just in my faith. So there are some selfish reasons to invest. But I think beyond that, we've promised them that we would do this. When they were infants or children or teenagers, whenever it was, when they were baptized into God's family, we promised them that we would love and encourage and support them as they grew by teaching them and being an example and supporting them as God's family. And that's a lifelong promise, no matter how old we get. And we've talked before about the impact of adults on a child's faith development. The research shows that it takes 5 adults investing in 1 student to make that student's faith something relevant after high school. And that starts in infancy, and Laura can't be the only adult, and I can't be the only adult, and the volunteers that we do have can't be those only adults. It's not possible. But I can give you an example, too. I'm also one of 5. And Christine Menning is a woman from Newkirk Reformed Church, and she's in the same generation as my great-grandparents. And she would routinely take an interest in how I was doing just by asking me how my week was and giving me a hug. And even something as small as engaging in a conversation had a huge impact on me just because I knew I mattered to her. And I think that's key is making sure they know that they are important.
Yeah, those adult relationships are so important for faith development. Harold, though, we move on to you, and we've talked about how children and youth need help. They need volunteers and discipleship areas, but at some point we move from these areas where others are volunteering and investing in us as children and youth to a place where we have to take some responsibility for our own discipleship. We have to put ourselves out there. We have to risk those experiences and opportunities. So ARC's adult discipleship opportunities, they start this week and next. What would you say to someone on the fence about participating?
Try it. You'll like it. We offer a variety of adult discipleship topics. Every adult should be able to find at least one topic that is of interest. You'll find our conversations about that topic to be lively and stimulating. No one is ever shy about speaking up. And you will surely learn something from talking with others who share your interest as you bring your varied life experiences to that conversation.
Thank you, Harold.
So Laura, Rose, and Harold, same question for all of you together. Our mission in America is to be a people who are transformed by Jesus to transform the world. Can you give an example or share a story about how you've actually seen this in the life of a child or a youth or an adult who's participated in discipleship activities? And one life that you've seen transform, keeping in mind transformation happens in little ways more often than in big ways. So, Rose, let's start with you, and then we'll just kind of go down the line. Harold, and then Laura will share.
Yeah, so this summer I learned after the fact that one of our 8th grade girls took it upon herself to host a welcome to middle school bonfire for the now 6th grade students. And she wanted to give them a chance to ask questions about middle school, give them information they needed to know to make that transition successfully. She has older sisters who helped her prepare, whether she wanted that help or not. I don't know that. But I think she was shown love in this way, and she made it her mission to then turn around and show that love to younger students than she.
Yeah, that's a good example, Rose. I don't have a great example, a dramatic example. I have a more indirect and subtle example that fits well with my previous reflections on the focus on conversation in our adult discipleship offerings. Last year, Chris Hausman, a sociology faculty member at Northwestern who worships in the Catholic tradition, was a guest facilitator guiding the conversation about the recent encyclical from Pope Francis titled On Care for Our Common Home, in which the Pope presents a strong case for Christians of all traditions to better care for the environment and to care for the poor and marginalized in our midst. One potentially transformative result was expressed by one attendee when he said to me that this conversation was a marvelous exemplification of Protestant and Catholic Christians learning from each other, which certainly has not been the case during much of the history of the church. And he went on to say that it was great that such a conversation could take place at American Reformed Church. Another potentially transformative result was that we Protestant members of this class were motivated by the splendid teachings from Catholic social theory to be more attuned to the need for us to commit to better care for the environment and the poor and marginalized. I don't have any documentation to prove this, but I hope and pray that some of us were inspired to greater partnership with God in these redemptive activities.
Thank you, Harold.
Yeah, I've seen little moments of transformation in unexpected ways throughout my years here at American. I've seen kids grow in courage and confidence. I've seen kids grow in kindness, in honesty, in wisdom, in lots of little ways. But one story that stuck out to me when I was thinking about this week was how I've seen Danielle Beltman grow. Last year at F3, on occasion, Danielle would kind of stay back against the wall and stay kind of by herself during most of the lesson. She was a bit shyer and quiet and didn't really engage with the other girls her age who were talking. Even when a leader would come up to her, she would kind of shut down and not really want to engage in conversation. But this summer, I saw a completely different Danielle. At the pool party when we had earlier in August, Danielle came running up to me and wanted to tell me all about her time at camp and how much fun she had had with Kaylin, her friend. And then at our 4th and 5th grade sleepover, which we had earlier in August at my house, Danielle was the first to arrive and was a little timid at first, just kind of getting to know the new space. But as the night went on, I was shocked. Danielle was talking more than anyone else throughout the evening and loved this new game that we played, Never Have I Ever, where you have to put down your fingers if you haven't done something someone else in the group has. And Danielle stayed up until 2 a.m. playing this game, laughing with her friends, and I crashed on the couch. I was done. But I just noticed that Danielle has learned that this space is trustworthy, that she can be herself, and that she can open up with confidence and with grace in relationship with her peers. And I think that's really beautiful, and it's a part of transformation and becoming more of who God made her to be.
Good, Laura, thank you. Now, I hate to do this to you because maybe you have some really awesome answers around the next set of questions that we had planned, but we're skipping those. So we were going to ask them about how they see acceptance, grace, wisdom, and love, our core values, lived out in their ministry areas. But unfortunately, we're going to skip to the questions about this fall. So this is our last question for each one of you. Laura, you've spent some time, a significant amount of time planning. I mean, you start basically in the spring, planning for the fall, and spend countless hours doing that for all the various children's ministries area. So now that you've done all that, what are you most looking forward to about the Start of Discipleship programs for our children?
Yeah, I'm excited that everything that's been in my head all summer is finally going to happen. I'm like, okay, it's time to do this in action. But what specifically I'm looking forward to, where our Wednesday night program, we're going to do a lot more small group learning and application with different projects every month to try and encourage the kids to live out what they are learning and use their creativity to kind of take ownership of what they are hearing during the lessons. For example, kids might write a prayer of confession themselves while we are learning about what it means to be sinful. They might write encouraging notes to another small group when they're learning about the fruit of the Spirit and what it means to be kind to others. There's lots of options, so I'm excited to see what the kids come up with. But overall, I am really excited to show kids how God's big story is beautiful. That's our theme for the year at F3. And we're going to focus a lot more on the big conceptual story instead of just all the smaller stories that they've heard during Sunday school, so that kids can see the big picture of who God is and hopefully claim that identity as God's child as a result.
Rosalyn, the same question for you. What are you most excited about for fall? What ministry area are you looking forward to?
I'm excited to reconnect with the kids. And I should say, I'm excited to reconnect with my kids because I claim each and every one of them as mine. Philip can even attest to that. I always call them my kids at home. But I'm excited to reconnect with them, and I'm excited for the big group stuff, but I'm even more excited for smaller group and one-on-one things. In middle school, we're doing small groups this year, and I get to be one of the leaders of the small group, and I'm excited to be a small group leader, and I'm excited for Leaps of Faith. I'm excited to work with our leaders, and I'm excited to work with that group of girls as they work really hard to put their faith in action. Literally, and so I'm really looking forward to those moments.
Great.
As I've already suggested, we design our adult discipleship offerings to be varied enough to enable each adult member to find something that's of particular interest. So I'm hoping that this fall a number of adults will choose the course that Rose will be offering starting today on the Good and Beautiful God, and the course entitled Church Renewal Starts With You, offered by the Ritter Church Renewal Team starting next week. But I'd like to close by mentioning what I think is a very unusual offering this year. A 16-week series starting next week on the theme, Helping All ARC Families to Flourish. Part of our amazing diversity that we celebrate at American Reformed Church is that there are a number of different family situations among us, with each situation presenting particular joys and challenges. For each such situation, selected storytellers from our congregation will share their personal stories, and we will reflect on those stories in a safe and welcoming space. The purpose being to gain a better understanding of these particular joys and challenges so that we can all better support those ARC families facing unique challenges.
So we've heard from our discipleship leaders what they're most looking forward to. We also took an opportunity this past week to ask some of you what you're looking forward to in adult discipleship. Please pay attention to the screen.
I'm looking forward to middle school youth group and meeting new people. I'm looking forward to F3 because it's fun and I really like it.
I'm excited for gender goals because it's fun.
This year for youth group, I'm looking forward for the trips and also getting to know God a little bit more.
I'm looking forward to youth group starting this year, even though I don't agree with Rose's decision and getting a babysitter for Joshua.
I'm most excited about starting Sunday school again, and I can't wait to build a bigger relationship with God.
I'm most looking forward to getting to know the kids even better this year and just hanging out with and having fun with them as we learn more about Jesus and the Bible this year.
I'm looking forward to F3 because I like when we get to do the F3 once we fill up the bouncy ball jars.
I'm looking forward to the adult discipleship classes. I've looked over what's been offered, and quite frankly, I haven't made up my mind which one I'm going to attend. They all just sound really interesting, that I would be able to get something out of each class.
The thing I'm most looking forward to is F3 because of the games and so much fun.
I'm excited to spend some time with the middle schoolers and to hear what they did for the summer, and it's always fun to hear what they think about God's Word and what they're experiencing as middle schoolers and how their faith journey is advancing.
In F3, I'm looking forward to spending time with my friends and learning more about God.
This year I'm really looking forward to reconnecting with the middle schoolers and also just meeting a bunch of new middle schoolers and seeing what the year has in store.
I'm really excited for F3 and Sunday school.
This year, I'm looking forward to learning more about God.
I greatly enjoy the adult discipleship offerings. I really like the way that they tackle some of the subjects that I'm not used to. I mean, beyond just the standard, if you will, Bible verses and stories, but some of the smaller texts that we have a tendency to glaze over, some of the tough subjects, whether it be in modern times or in ancient times. Adult discipleship is a great opportunity for me to grow and for me to spend a week thinking about and trying to process.
I'm looking forward to F3 because it's fun.
So I think what I'm most looking forward to is seeing the enthusiasm of the kids, but also the teachers. And having worked with Laura over the summer on curriculum, it was really fun putting together new ideas. So I'm excited to see how the teachers are going to implement those ideas and really have fun with the kids in the classroom.
I'm looking forward to a new school year at Sunday school. We're teaching the 2nd and 3rd grade class, and I'm looking forward to my wife preparing the lessons.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the students again and all their excitement with the activities we do and with the lesson, and especially looking forward to Mr. Sampson telling the stories.
So those are some of the ways that staff and volunteers have been preparing for these opportunities and some of the ways in which participants are looking forward to them.